start the recording and then pause it. And now economic protection for all of us. Oh, thank you. Great. And then CUNY pays for it. They're self-insured. They pay for it themselves. CUNY pays dollar for dollar as the claims are made. They don't pay into a fund. And I mean, John may differ with me, but I noticed that CUNY denies most claims regardless of their merit, but that the unemployment board, the unemployment department goes through these claims to see if they have merit or not. So we don't all wind up getting denied. Your UI claim is for 52 weeks and you can be paid up to 26. And there are other things to go with that, but basically it's 26 weeks is the totality of your claim. And now I'm going to turn it over to John because we're going to talk about that really difficult, sticky topic of unemployment insurance and reasonable assurance. John?
Okay. Thank you and welcome everybody. Thank you so much to the PSC for organizing this. I think it's important, especially at this time of the year, for adjuncts to be informed as to whether or not you are or might be eligible to collect unemployment benefits during the summer when many of you will not have work and need the money and are entitled to the money. So, our basic question today is, are adjuncts eligible for unemployment during the summer? And the answer is, it depends. It depends on a variety of questions and circumstances. Our organization, the Workers' Defense League, founded in 1936, has been involved in unemployment insurance for a number of decades now. We've represented hundreds and thousands of unemployed claimants who were denied benefits, including a lot of adjuncts, including union members, unorganized workers throughout New York State. So we talk to workers every day about these problems and try to give them the best of our advice. We are not attorneys. What I'm telling you now is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer and never have been. But non-lawyers are allowed by and welcomed by the state to represent people, and it helps to know something about the system. We've learned by doing over time. So going back to the question of whether adjuncts are eligible, let me just sort of say at the beginning that those of you who have one-year reappointment letters, which should be arriving pretty soon, are the most likely to be eligible for unemployment insurance benefits during the summer. Those of you who are on sort of a semester-to-semester basis, who are appointed just for the next semester, are a little less likely, and those of you who are on 3-year and now 2-year contracts are perhaps less likely to qualify. And I will explain this as the hour goes on. It's my understanding that under the PSC contract, if a person has taught 6 semesters in a row at a particular college, they are entitled to get a 1-year reappointment letter. This doesn't promise you necessarily any specific courses or any number of courses. And sometimes people get non-reappointment letters, but very often people who have taught for at least 3 years at a college, usually get these. You're entitled to get it under the contract. So if you don't, you need to contact the union and let them know that you haven't gotten a 1-year reappointment letter. You're entitled to it. So that becomes very important because the way that the unemployment insurance law works is that there is a special rule called 590.10, 590.10. It's a special section of the New York State unemployment law. And what it says essentially is that those who work for educational institutions like adjuncts, particularly adjuncts, are not entitled to receive unemployment during the summer break or during the winter break if you have what's called reasonable assurance or probable assurance that you're going to be rehired for roughly the same amount of work, at least 90% of the work you had in either the preceding year or the preceding semester. So let's take a simple example. A person is teaching 2 courses this spring. They've already been told, we're going to want you back for those same 2 courses next fall. And they're told this with reasonable assurance, either orally or in writing or both. you have no reason to doubt that you're actually going to get these same two courses again. And you only have a 1-semester reappointment. That person is not eligible for unemployment under 590.10 because they've been given this reasonable assurance of rehire for similar services. Okay. Now, if a person has a 1-year reappointment letter, then that changes things because then the comparison is from year to year rather than semester to semester. So if a person is taught 2 courses last fall of 2024, and 2 courses again this spring, then even if they're told that they're going to have those same 2 courses in the fall of 2025, we're comparing the entire academic year to the coming academic year. So if you taught 4 courses this past academic year, the one just ending, and you've so far only been reasonably assured of 2 for the coming year, that's not similar services and you're eligible. So that's why the 1-year reappointment letter is very important. It's the key to the whole thing for a lot of people. So if you have a 1-year reappointment letter, it's very unlikely that they're going to assure you of the same amount of work for the coming year as you had during the entire preceding year. So those people are much more likely to qualify. Now, what Pam said a moment ago about contesting claims, your application is made to the Department of Labor, and they're the ones who determine whether or not you're eligible. So, very, very often the Department of Labor turns people down who shouldn't be turned down. Like in the case I just mentioned, where a person had taught 4 courses over the last year, has only been promised 2 so far for the coming year. The Department of Labor will still send them a denial notice saying, you're denied under 590.10, you have reasonable assurance of rehire for similar services, period. You have the right to ask for a hearing within 30 days. And it's very simple. You just write back and say, I disagree with this. I want a hearing. Okay. Months later, because they're very delayed, you'll get a hearing date. Meanwhile, you keep claiming during the summer, each week, you certify every Sunday that you're still unemployed, et cetera. And when you get the hearing, we represent people at those hearings. We do it for free. We win many, many of these hearings where people are turned down. There's no good reason. CUNY usually doesn't even show up at the hearings because they know they have no case. And we just win it hands down. It involves delay. And, it's a hassle because you're delayed and you have to wait for a hearing. But the hearings are all online. They're scheduled. They run when they're scheduled. If they schedule at 9 a.m., it'll run at 9 a.m. and it's over by 9:30 or 10, and you get a decision within a week or so, and then you get your payments, those that you've certified for. So we see this a lot. Now, CUNY is giving the Department of Labor information, which leads the Department of Labor to turn people down. So in that sense, they're opposing claims, but they're not really actively opposing that many claims these days. Some they are, sometimes they show up at these hearings and we fight it out with them, but often they're not. So, our biggest problem is that the Department of Labor often turns down people who they shouldn't turn down. We're right there to help if you want to fight this, and we encourage people to fight it if you're eligible. We also encourage people to call us if you have any question about whether or not you would be eligible. Right. So right now, we're in May and the semester is ending very soon. And some of you may be thinking, well, am I really eligible for this? Do I want to apply? Should I or shouldn't I? You can feel free to call us and we'll talk. And, I'll go over with you what you've been teaching and where you've been teaching and what you've been told about the coming year. And then I can tell you what I think about whether or not you should or shouldn't apply, whether or not you're going to be deemed eligible. And so on. And I, we do sometimes tell people, look, you're really not likely to be eligible. You can go ahead and apply if you want to, but, our best guess is that you'll be turned down. The most important thing is when you apply, if you apply, is to fully disclose everything that's relevant, right? They're going to ask you questions about what's coming up, what you've been told about the coming year. It's very important that you answer that accurately. It's not enough to say, well, I haven't been told in writing, therefore I haven't been told. If you've been told orally, if you've been told by text or email, you really have to disclose what you've been told. Then the Department of Labor, if they pay you and they change their mind later, they can't come after you for the money or for penalties. Because if you've been honest and disclosed everything you've been asked, then you're going to be okay. You're protected. one other thing along that line is when you apply for benefits, and applying, by the way, is very simple. You just, Google in apply for NYS, New York State unemployment insurance. The application comes right up. It takes about 20 or 25 minutes to fill out. It's mostly factual. Two of the questions on the application are, do you work for an educational institution? Yes. And are you between years or terms? If you're applying now, for the summer, the answer to that is also yes. And I've had adjuncts say to me, well, it really isn't because they run summer courses and therefore it's not between terms, but it is. The summer is between years or semesters. So you need to answer yes to both of those questions. Because if you answer no to one or the other of them, that can cause a problem. They can accuse you of making a willful false statement and you can have some difficulty. So it's very important if you're applying to answer that question. The other thing is they're going to ask you to tell them everywhere you've worked in the last year to year and a half. So that includes, every school. I mean, a lot of adjuncts teach at many schools. You teach at multiple CUNY campuses. Sometimes people teach at other colleges or colleges in other states. You want to tell them everything. The more you earned in the last year, the higher your benefit rate, for one thing. And also, it's required. And each school, if you teach at multiple colleges, each one of those colleges is going to be looked at in terms of this reasonable assurance question. So there may be one school where you're semester to semester and you've been given assurance of the same amount of work, but then another school where you're on a 1-year reappointment and you haven't been given assurance. So the earnings from one school might be countable towards a claim, and the earnings from another might not be countable. It just means you get a little less money. But, all of that becomes important. So, you're going to be asked about each individual college and you just tell them. Now, one last thing, I want to stop and open it up to questions. One last thing that I do want to tell you is a bit of good news that we've had in the last few days, which is that there apparently is something going into the state budget, which I can go into in detail, but what it's going to mean is that the maximum unemployment benefit in New York is going to rise significantly. It has been at a maximum of $504 for the last 6 years due to budgetary complications having to do with the pandemic and so on. Those problems are now going to be solved, and the result is going to be a dramatic increase in the benefit rate. The estimates that I'm hearing is that the maximum could go as high as $850 a week. Okay, now that's the maximum. Not everybody would qualify for that. But many of those who hit the ceiling, right, who qualify for 504, when the rate goes up, will qualify for more money. This is going to happen in October, so it's not going to have any effect this summer, unfortunately, but the stakes become higher, okay, because people who are applying for unemployment, once this happens, are likely, many of them, to qualify for a lot more money, which will, of course, be more important in enabling people to survive between jobs and so on. So anyway, this is very good news in a world in which we're getting used to terrible news every single day. This is good news, and it's good news for adjuncts as well as anybody else who becomes unemployed and needs these benefits. So at this point, let me just add one other thing, because this came up before we started talking. People always ask when we have these workshops, if I'm getting Social Security or if I'm getting a pension, does that count? First of all, do I have to report that, or do I, is that going to have any effect on my eligibility for unemployment? The answer is no. The Department of Labor is only interested in your earnings from work. Okay, so if you're getting a pension or if you're getting Social Security, that does not block you from getting unemployment. They ask you, are you getting a pension? They do ask that question on the application. You certainly answer, but that should not block you from getting unemployment. Okay, so let's stop there. I'm sure other things will bubble up in the questions that I haven't addressed here, but I think we want to hear from you about what kinds of questions and issues and concerns you have.
Great. So there's 2 ways to do this. You can either reach out and I will read questions, or Claudia will read questions, or we can, if you raise your hand and ask questions, that's great. So first I'm going to take the people who have their hands raised, Hamida,
Yeah, Hamide.
and then Susan.
Yeah, thank you so much. I applied last year for unemployment. It took a long, long time until somebody called me back and I wasn't around. And I wasn't able to get a hold of them. I kept calling and calling and calling. Nobody picked up. And I didn't know what to do. So I dropped it. So I like to know what is the best phone number to contact them. If not, what is the best place to go to get them? Because I'm afraid the same thing is going to happen this year. They're going to reject me, but they won't be able to tell me why. And then I have to chase them and nothing happens. The summer goes by and I don't get a penny. My question
well,
is, how
John,
to,
did you
what is
wanna-
the best way of contacting them by the phone as well as going there and just showing up? Where do we go?
Okay, all right, so let me see if I can answer this. So it is very difficult to get through to the Department of Labor by phone. This is a big, big problem. We are able to contact the Department of Labor for people who are running into that kind of problem and get them to call you. Okay, so if you've gotten a notification from the Department of Labor saying, we need to talk to you, call us, and then you can't get through to them, you can call our number, 212-627-1931. We'll repeat that later on also, and we can communicate by email to the Department of Labor and get them to call you. Now, if you've been denied benefits, there's no reason to call them. You need to just write back to them in writing and ask for a hearing, okay? But if there's some reason you need to call them, if there's something that's incomplete on your application, or if you're not able to finish it for some reason, or if you're having trouble certifying each week for the benefits, then you do need to reach them. So call us, we'll help you. The other thing is 250 Skirmerhorn Street in downtown Brooklyn is still an office that's open. You can go down there and get some help, although I'm not sure how much. But if that's not too much trouble, some people do report going to 250 Skirmerhorn and getting some assistance in this kind of situation. But calling us might be easy.
So would I be qualified to collect what I didn't collect last summer?
Well,
This year?
I don't know. I have to talk to you individually. So call me up.
Thank you.
Great, Susan.
Thank you. I've been offered a course that I accepted that won't begin until July 17. And so I have no work for part of May and all of June and half of July. So can I apply for unemployment for that period of time?
Yes. I mean, if you're completely unemployed until July 17th and this semester is over, you should not apply until this semester is completely over. Okay. Even if you're done with exams and so on, don't apply until the semester is officially over. But then if you apply, you can claim benefits. Then when and if you start working again, you just stop claiming. Okay. And then if that summer course is over before the fall begins, you can resume claiming benefits. You're allowed to stop and start. Okay, that's permitted. Now, one other thing I'll add is that, people who go away for the summer or go on vacation for the summer should not apply for unemployment. People who have other jobs, full-time jobs during the summer should not apply for unemployment. Okay, even if you're not working at your adjunct job. So if you're working or if you're not available for work, you should not be applying. But if you're available for work and you're unemployed for part of the summer, yes, you can apply and claim for that part of the summer when you're unemployed.
What about
I can barely hear you, by the way.
Oh,
You're
can
coming
you
in
hear
very
me better
faintly.
now?
No, you're coming in
No.
very faintly. I can barely hear you. I'm not sure if anybody else can.
Wow, what about now? Can you hear me better?
You're still
Okay.
very faint.
Uh,
Not sure why.
I'm,
But go
I'm-
ahead.
I'm hoping to do some tutoring at half my hourly rate next month. Does that eliminate me from being able to get unemployment? 'Cause
Okay, so this has to do with the question of partial unemployment. Okay, so if you are unemployed and you're working a little bit, right, part-time, you can collect partial unemployment, because those of you who have claimed unemployment before know that each week when you certify, in order to get the benefits, you have to certify either by going online or by getting on the phone. And each week you answer the same half dozen questions. Did you work this week? If you answer yes, they ask you, how many hours did you work? And then they ask you, did you earn more than $504 in gross earnings? Okay. So if you worked fewer than 31 hours, and it has to be both, you earned less than 504 gross, you can collect partial unemployment. It depends on how many hours. If you work fewer than 11 hours and you earn less than 504, you can collect full unemployment. So if you're just tutoring, 10 hours a week or less, and you're earning less, not whether you've gotten the pay, but if you're earning less than 504 gross earnings before taxes, then you can still collect full unemployment. And if you work a little more, if you work 15 or 20 hours, they're going to take away some of it, but they'll give you, half or 3/4 of whatever your rate is. So, if you're underemployed, you can still collect partial. Yeah.
Last, very quick, can you hear me better now?
Nope. Same thing. But
Yep.
I can
Oh,
hear you.
man. Does this affect the possibility of future employment at CUNY?
No.
Okay. This is the question that comes up every time we do one of these about retaliation. Okay. My answer is no, it doesn't, because in all the years I've been doing this, I've never seen anybody retaliate. This goes to the question of who needs who more. Okay. They need you. Never forget that. Okay. CUNY needs you guys to teach their students. Okay. They are not going to fire you because you claim unemployment. I just haven't seen it happen. So don't be afraid. If you are eligible, you have the right to apply for these benefits. If you get any flack about it, please call us. We want to know about that. But I would not be afraid.
Thank you.
Yeah, also it doesn't even come out of your school budget. It comes out of the central CUNY budget. So, whatever people have said to you, it comes out of the central budget. So I want John to ask a question from the chat. It's from Propa. If we have a verbal reasonable assurance for the next semester, do you suggest we don't apply at all?
Well, it depends on whether you're on a semester to semester appointment and whether the assurance is for the same amount of work. So, as I said before, if you've been teaching 2 courses this spring and they offer you these 2 courses again in the fall, and you just have a 1 semester appointment letter, then you probably should not apply. But if you have a 1-year reappointment letter, that's different. So, it depends on, or let's say you're semester to semester, you taught 3 courses this spring, and you've only been offered 2 so far for the fall, then you should apply, then you're eligible. So
Right.
It depends on the amount. It's not a matter of, whether you've been offered anything. It's a matter of how much you've been offered. It's a matter of what is the comparison going to be? Is it going to be year to year? Is it going to be semester to semester? That depends on your reappointment. Okay. Again, if you're reappointed for a year, the comparison is year to year. If you're on a 2-year contract, the comparison is from year to year. Now, the thing about 2-year and 3-year contracts is that they do give you a guarantee of a certain floor, right? A certain, amount of earnings, 6 credits per semester. So, there, again, it depends on how much you've been teaching previously compared to how much you are assured of in the coming year.
Right. Well, John, I just have one other question. They wrote verbal reasonable assurance, not an appointment letter, and I guess not on CUNY First. Like they didn't.
Okay. Well, okay. It all depends on whether or not your understanding is that you're probably going to have this work. Okay. So if somebody who reliably can tell you, we're going to want you for these 2 courses, right? Even if it's not yet posted on CUNY First, and even if you haven't gotten anything official, then, that can be considered to be reasonable assurance. Now, one could apply and say, look, I've been told by my chairman that I'm going to have these 2 courses, but there's nothing up on CUNY First, and I haven't been given anything in writing, therefore I'm applying. That's called full disclosure. Okay. you're applying, you may or may not be eligible, but you're telling them everything that you need to tell them. Let the Department of Labor decide. You
Right.
know, if they turn you down, you could ask, you know, you could pursue it. You could ask for a hearing, wait and see whether they come through with the courses, you know. So all that is possible. But reasonable assurance is defined pretty broadly, okay? It's probable, it's not absolute. So, you know, this is the distinction that people have to keep in mind. Just because you haven't gotten it officially and absolutely doesn't mean it's not probable. You know, on the other hand, if your department chair says, well, we may have these courses for you, but it all depends on whether you get 20 students signed up, and that may or may not happen, or we may have to give one of your courses to a full-timer or something like that, then they've introduced doubt, okay? Then you can safely say to the Department of Labor, I've been told this, but it's also been, you know, I've been told other things that indicate that I may not actually get these courses. Okay, so, you know, each case is different. You have to pay attention to the particular.
Great, thanks. LaJoyce, Dr. LaJoyce Brookshire, you're next.
Ah, I know you.
Nope,
She there?
I guess. Let's go to Angel or Angel.
Yes,
Perez Martinez, and then we can come back.
thank you.
I'm
Thank you.
here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, okay. Angel, we'll go right to you after. Yeah, LaJoyce, you can go, and then.
Okay, hi, John.
Hi.
Hi.
Great to see you.
It's a tragedy we have to be here every year. Let me just say that.
Yes, that's true.
And for those of you who may doubt, John is extremely helpful and goes to bat for you at those hearings. And we were very successful in accomplishing the end goal. My question is that once we go through this again this over the summer, and since we're due our back pay, and if we receive our back pay, how does that affect what we say on the weekly claim?
Recertification, not a
Yes.
problem. Okay, owed back pay is not earnings from work.
Mm,
So you don't have to worry about that. You know, the questions they ask on the certification are, did you work this past week? And if so, what did you earn this last week? Not did you get any money? Did you get any owed vacation? Did you get any of this? No, that's not a problem. In terms of
Okay.
the tragedy of having to do this, we don't agree with this law, this 590.10 law. You know, I mean, our view is that people who are unemployed through no fault of their own should be entitled to benefits, okay? But that's the current law, and it's going to be very hard, and certainly in the present atmosphere, to change it and broaden eligibility. So we have to work with what we've got, but we've
Yes.
got more than we know. You know, there are a lot of people who, even under the present restrictions, are entitled, and that's what we try to shout from the housetops is, you know, you may be entitled to benefits, check on it. And if you are, you know, don't hesitate to apply.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you, John.
Thanks. Okay, so on Angel or on
Yes,
Angel?
yeah, thank you.
Angel, okay.
Thank you for this, because this is the first time I'm going through this. It happens that I do teach as an adjunct in one of the CUNY campuses, but last week we got a notification because most of my salary comes from RF CUNY as a researcher, and we got a notification that the NIH just slashed the grant. So effectively in May, I am without a salary. So in this case, since most of my funds used to come from that grant, how do I manage this? Do you think I can apply for unemployment through this? And yeah, because it's quite confusing on how to proceed.
Right. So you've got two income streams. One is from the Research Foundation and one is from your adjunct teaching, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if one of them is being cut off, and that's the major one, right?
Yes.
Then you're probably going to be eligible. They would count the earnings, your recent earnings from the Research Foundation. If you have disqualifying reasonable assurance, from the adjunct work, they wouldn't count the recent earnings from that. But if most of your earnings are from the research foundation, then you would have enough recent, countable earnings to qualify. If you want to call me, at 212-627-1931 and leave me a message, I'll call you back and we can go over the details. But that sounds like a situation where you would be eligible. So that's a good example of what I think I referred to before. You have multiple employers. The earnings from some of them might be countable towards a claim. You have to have a certain amount of countable earnings. So if you have that amount of countable earnings, you're in, even if some of your recent earnings aren't counted.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you a lot.
Of course.
Great.
Sorry that happened to you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's terrible. Okay, and just remember, RF is not an educational institution.
Well, no,
Diane.
it is. No,
RF CUNY
well,
is a private
all right.
foundation.
Okay. Well, okay. We're right. So,
Yeah,
right. Reasonable
pri-
assurance of rehire at RF is not the same thing. You're right.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Which is because I have funds from RF too. That's why I know.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay. Sorry
Okay.
about that.
That's okay. Diane.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, John, for doing this. I'm still on a 3-year, and I'm pretty sure my summer classes are going to be canceled. So I don't know if I should even apply because I did last year and I was turned down.
Okay.
I also have an income stream from the union because I'm chapter chair at Lehman, and I can't get release time, so they pay me a minuscule amount.
Right.
Union is also not an educational institution, so I'm not sure how I look at that.
Right. The earnings from PSC would count. Did you teach more than 2 courses per semester this past year?
Yes, 3 courses a semester every year.
Okay. So the 3-year contract only guarantees you 6 credits per semester for the coming year. So if you taught 9 credits per semester this year, and so far you haven't been assured of anything more than the 6 and 6 for next year, then you're probably eligible.
Okay, they turned me down last year, so I should.
Well, was it the same? But was it the same situation? Did you have 3 and 3 the preceding year?
Yes, I always
You
have.
did. Well, if you always have 3 and 3, but when are you told that you're going to have the 3 and 3? That's the crucial question.
Yeah,
Do you
well,
know that already? In other words, do you know already that you're going to have 3 and 3 next year?
I'm given the 3 courses for the fall, but I don't know that they are going to fill up and be allowed to go ahead.
Okay, but they usually are, right?
Yeah, so far.
And how about for the spring? When do they tell you the
Oh, I won't-
names of the courses? That's really the key.
I won't know that till after this the end of fall semester. Towards the-
Okay, well, then you might be eligible. Again, I would encourage you to call me up, leave me a message. I'll call you back and we'll talk about it, but you might make it. See, the other thing is you were turned down last year, but that doesn't mean you were turned down fairly, okay? Did you ask for a hearing?
No.
No. See, if you're turned down and you think it's not fair, you should ask for a hearing. You have 30 days to write in and say, I don't agree, I want a hearing. Just do it. Or call me up and we'll talk about why you've been turned down, and I'll tell you whether I would encourage you to ask for a hearing, whether I think you have a fighting chance.
Okay.
Often you do. So just because you're turned down, that's not the end of it. Okay. I tell people that's only the beginning. Okay. You're turned down. I mean, a lot of people, adjuncts and many others, are turned down unfairly. Okay. That's why you have a right to a hearing. The judge is going to listen to you, and they will not hesitate to rule in your favor and overturn the Department of Labor if they think the Department of Labor was wrong. So we do this, all the time, and we want to help you. So, call us if you think you have a chance and you want to pursue it. The way it works, by the way, is you leave me a message, I call you back from this kitchen, where I'm sitting right now, because I work mostly remotely. So I call back from my no caller ID cell number. So just to alert people that, if you leave us a message, which you can do 24 hours, 7 days, very easy, we'll answer you usually within the next 24 hours, but we'll be calling from a no caller ID phone. So just to alert you to that, because I know people don't like calls, but we have to, but we haven't figured out another way to do it. So just to alert you to that, but do not hesitate to call us. We'll advise you as best we can.
Okay.
Great.
One more quick
Thanks.
thing.
Oh.
I've heard that when I was on unemployment before, a few years ago, I didn't have to document looking for work, but I've heard from people that you do have to now. Is that true?
Well, they sort of spot check it. Sometimes they contact you and say, where have you been looking? So, you're supposed to be, theoretically, you're supposed to be looking for work. So, it's good to have some evidence available to show that you've been asking around, looking online. I mean, work search can take a variety of forms, but you're
Right.
supposed to be available. So, again, if you're really on vacation, if you're really, especially if you go away somewhere, you should not apply because you are supposed to be available, also capable, right? So if, by any chance you're not capable of work during the summer, you're having some health problem or something like that, then you shouldn't be claiming while that's going on. But no, they aren't asking everybody to document their work search. That's not happening as far as I know.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yeah, I just want to repeat, do not claim unemployment from out of the country.
Oh, yes.
Do not do that.
Right.
Even if you're looking for work out of the country, it's like, just don't do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, you're not allowed. You're
Right.
you're simply not allowed. So, if you're
Right.
lucky
Yep.
enough to go abroad for the summer, great, but don't apply. Don't claim unemployment while you're out.
Right. Don't claim. Right. I mean,
Right.
if you applied for it when you're here, certainly, and you're ready, but I
Yeah.
just want to say, don't
Right.
claim
And
unemployment.
let's say you do that. Let's say you have a 2-week vacation abroad during the summer. Just don't claim during those 2 weeks.
Right.
Resume claiming at the end of the first full week that you're back. They're going to ask you, we see you didn't claim for the last 2 weeks. Were you working during those 2 weeks? The answer is no. They'll resume paying you. So you're allowed again to stop and start.
Right. Great. Alexandra? Jay? You're muted.
Okay, is it good?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's very helpful. I have a question, I guess, about retaliation. I've been
A
discussing.
little louder, please.
Yeah, I'll get closer. Yeah, I guess it's about retaliation. I've been discussing with other faculty, and I've been telling them I think we qualify. And a few of them, maybe me included, I just started in the fall, so I'm not sure what to think, but they've been telling me it's a bad look. Maybe we shouldn't do this. So I'm just trying to
Well, wait, who's
understand.
been telling you that? Your fellow adjuncts or?
Yeah, fellow adjuncts that
Okay.
have been there for more years, and I feel maybe know the vibe a little more.
Mhm.
But maybe they're wrong. So I guess I'm trying to understand, like, who does the application goes through? You say the money comes from the central budget.
Well,
Does that
okay.
ever go through my chairman? And
Well,
like,
okay.
who knows about it close to where I teach in my school?
Okay, so maybe you've joined us, since we began, because a few minutes ago, this question came up before about retaliation. I don't really think that you need to worry about retaliation. Okay, I don't see it happening. I haven't seen it happening. I don't think it happens. Okay.
Does the
In terms
chair?
of who knows whether or not you're applying, I can't say to you that your department doesn't know, because they might or they might not. I mean, the ones who process the applications for CUNY are at a central office. There's a unit that actually does this. And they're the ones who fight claims. Now, sometimes when they fight claims, they'll bring in the chairman of the department or the chairperson of the department, often against their will, to testify, oh, we gave reasonable assurance. They haven't been doing it that much in recent years. But I can't say that your department is not going to know. However, I don't think it's going to matter. I think that this is just worry. It's understandable that people are concerned, but I think that they don't need to be. I don't think that they retaliate. I don't think you need to worry about that. I don't think that I don't think it's going to hurt you. I think that whether you have a good look or a bad look is based on other things. It's based on the quality of your teaching. It's based on, other kinds of relationships. I don't think it's based on whether you apply for unemployment. So again, I say this all the time. Don't be afraid. If you need the money and you want to apply and you think you're eligible, you should not hesitate.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I
Great.
just started, so I'm not on a 1 year yet. I'll get back in touch with you when I'm on a 1 year contract.
Yeah. Now, the other thing is, I'm not saying that people who are just semester to semester are not qualified. Okay. Again, it depends. If you're semester to semester and you're at 3 schools, 1 or 2 of them may not have given you assurance of the same amount of work for the fall. Therefore, you're eligible. So it's not cut and dry. I'm just saying that people on 1 years have a little bit more likelihood of qualifying. But
Okay.
I'm not saying that people on semester to semester don't qualify. Please, I want to make that clear.
Andre Houlihan,
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
thank you.
So thank you so much, of course, first of all. But I have a case that I think probably I don't qualify, but I figured I would ask. So I am semester to semester. I have the same number of appointments for the fall semester as I did last semester, the spring semester. However, I was given a summer course. I was on CUNY first. It was all my EPAP or whatever the thing was approved by. It was all approved, and then it was canceled for lack of enrollment. Does that change anything, or am
It doesn't. That's really the unfair aspect of the system, is that it actually doesn't matter that you had an assured summer course and now it's canceled. It doesn't matter. Because what they're looking at is, what have you been told about the coming semester or year as compared to the preceding semester or year? So unfortunately, that doesn't make a difference. I mean, it does mean that you're unemployed, so that if you qualified otherwise, you would qualify, but it doesn't clinch it.
Okay.
Now, again, I don't think I've said this so far, but when we talk about what's reasonable assurance, it's when they name the courses. That's the key. Okay. So even if they say to you, we're going to want you back, and even if they say we're going to want you back for 2 courses, if they haven't told you the names of those courses, okay, and what days and what times, then that falls short in the eyes of the Department of Labor and usually the judges of being reasonable assurance. So again, they have to be pretty specific. The reappointment letters are usually mention no specifics. They say you're reappointed for the fall of 2025 and the spring of 2026. There's no mention of specific courses. So it's when they start talking about the specific courses by name, that's when it becomes reasonable assurance, or when it begins to look like it. So again, if you've been told about the names of the 2 courses that you're going to get this fall, then that probably means you're out of luck.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Joanne,
Oh, thank you. I've been reappointed to the same department for the same 9 credits for over 12 years. And I've only ever gotten a per term reappointment letter. I want to know, who do I contact to get a 1 year appointment letter? Who
Right.
decides this?
Right.
Also,
Well,
the 2 year and
Marcia?
3 year contract, how do we know, whether we were granted a 2 year or 3 year contract? I've never been told that by anyone.
right.
Okay, is
Well-
Marcia on?
Yes.
Marcia, do you want to talk to her? Well, I think you have to call the union. That's number 1, but Marcia can give you that information.
Well, you should call your chair. You should become aware of the provision in the contract that says you're entitled to a 1 year after 6 semesters. And so you should call your chair, HR. I would start with the chair. But and as far as eligibility for the 2 year, you have to figure it out and make sure that you're on the list. Unfortunately, that's the way it works. You have to know. You can look in CUNY first on your work history, etc. So that if you've taught 10 out of 12 semesters for 6 hours, that's what the criteria is. And James Davis has put out a lot of information on that. So
Yeah.
if you can't figure it out, call the union, but try to figure it out. Okay. The other thing I wanted to say, because I had my hand, I'm going to cheat, that John, Rosenfeld was denied reappointment when he pulled the whole unemployment business.
Rosenbaum.
Rosenbaum. at Kingsborough, just for the record. This is you should probably talk to them about all that Rosenbaum did for the world, for the adjunct world.
Right.
Okay, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, that is the one and only case of somebody being retaliated against. There are two brothers. I think it's Bill Rosenbaum. He taught at Kingsborough for many years. But CUNY PSC actually grieved that and won him a big settlement. Plus, he got back in. That's the one and only case of retaliation. They may have been retaliating against him for other reasons too. But other than that,
but his rulings has affected the whole.
Okay, so we can talk about that. This is what's known as the Rosenbaum decision. It's a state Supreme Court ruling on his unemployment case. And this is the ruling that establishes the principle that if you have a 1-year reappointment letter, the comparison is going to be from year to year rather than semester to semester. That's under this Rosenbaum decision, which is now from about 10 years ago. So, that's where that principle of unemployment insurance law comes from. It's not written into the statute. It was a decision made by the court.
Right, exactly. Which I actually quote it whenever I'm writing a narrative about anything for a hearing for unemployment, according to the Rosenbaum decision, because then then I don't have to deal with it with the judge. I've already put it in there. I've been to many different, I myself have been to too many hearings. I don't even want to talk about it, but he's always like, oh, see, you have it right here, the Rosenbaum decision, and he doesn't have to think. That's always good. The less work your judge has to do in the hearing, the better off you are. So, what I mean is the more information you put into your narrative about why you do not have reasonable assurance, the better you are.
Right. Well, again, you have to put in the relevant facts.
Right. Relevant. Right. That's what I meant.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. All right. Claudia.
Yeah. Somebody direct messaged me with a question about what about 2-year appointments? Now our multi-years start as 2-year appointments.
Okay. So my assumption right now, and this remains to be seen, is that 2-year contracts are similar to 3-year contracts in that they do give you a guarantee of at least 6 credits per semester for the next 4 semesters. So once you have that, that means that, even if it's a year-to-year situation, if you only taught 4 courses this year and you've now got a 2-year appointment beginning in the fall, or 2-year contract beginning in the fall, you're not eligible for unemployment because you've got a guarantee assurance of the same amount of work for the coming year as you had in the preceding year. Now, it remains to be seen whether this is a solid guarantee. My experience with the 3-year contracts is that those guarantees were very solid. I have not heard from anybody who got a 3-year contract who didn't get 6 credits per semester, for those 3 years. But the 2-year may be a little different. I don't think so, but that sort of remains to be seen. But if you've gotten a 2-year contract, that guarantees you a floor. And again, you have to see whether or not you had earnings above that floor this preceding year, So it doesn't mean you automatically are not entitled, but it may mean that you're not eligible for benefits.
Thanks, John.
Great, thanks. Barry Murdaco.
Thank you. So I'm teaching 3 classes now, and I'm scheduled to teach 3 again in the fall. However, one of the classes is listed as closed, and no one can register for it. And the chair has basically already told me that most likely that class will not run. So does that mean I can apply?
So have they told you that in writing?
Over email, yeah, sure.
Okay, that's writing. Okay, then that means that you've been given reasonable assurance of 2 courses and not 3.
Okay.
So are you semester to semester? Is this all at one school?
I'm at the end of a 1-year contract now, and I should be going on to a 2-year one. I put in the formal request and everything.
But you haven't gotten it yet.
No.
Right? Okay.
No.
So you have to compare year to year, right? So the comparison would be if you were on a 1-year appointment for this past year, the question is how many courses did you have altogether for this past year compared to what you've been assured of so far for next year?
Yeah, three for both.
Okay, so you had 3 and 3 this year, and you've only so far been given probable assurance of 2 for the fall, nothing yet for the spring. But even if you get a 2-year appointment, if you only are assured of 2 and 2 for next year, that's less than 90% of 3 and 3.
Okay.
You're in.
Just that if it shows that there's 3, I mean, would that cause problems with the?
No, because you have the evidence in the form of an email from the chair saying this course is probably not going to run, or definitely?
Probably not.
Probably not going to run. There you go. You furnish that to the Department of Labor. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Give them that.
Sure. Thanks.
Great. Thanks. Alejandro.
Hi, thanks. I apologize. I had a little audio issue before, so if this has already been asked, I apologize. But just curious about income that's received in between semesters that is tracked on 1099s. There's a couple of contract gigs that I do here and there. It's not employment in that way, but I wonder if that interferes with an unemployment claim.
Okay, so a very important question. So independent contract work is still work, okay? So you still have to report it. So, if you're collecting unemployment and you've got some independent contract work, when you certify each week, they're going to ask you, did you work this week? Yes, you did. Okay, because work is work. Now, if you earned more than 504 in that independent contract work, that doesn't count. Okay, so you can, if you do independent contract work, you have to report the number of hours, but if you earned $1,000, that doesn't matter. You're allowed to do that because it's independent contract work and still collect, right? So it's a little tricky. It's a little subtle. In terms of when you apply, they ask you, where have you worked in the last year or year and a half? You tell them everything. Independent contract work, employment, W-2, 1099. Sometimes people get 1099s for work that should be paid on a W-2. That's called misclassification. The Department of Labor is very sensitive to that. They want to decide whether these are countable earnings or not. So you tell them everything. That's the important thing.
Thank you.
Yeah. But let me just add, if you have a full-time independent contract gig, right, more than 30 hours while you're unemployed, during the summer, let's say, you should not claim unemployment because you're working more than 30 hours, But if you're working less than 31 hours, then it's possible that you can collect at least partial.
Yeah, this is event-based gig work. So it's like, a 3-day event and then maybe something else, maybe not.
Okay.
That kind of thing.
Well, maybe for that week, you won't get benefits, but again, it's temporary.
Thank you.
John, I have a question. If I'm a new adjunct and only taught one class last semester on a semester to semester basis, I was told I had a class, and then recently I was told that the class is designated as tentative based on enrollment in other courses. Am I eligible to claim unemployment for the summer?
Well, anyone is allowed to apply, okay? So the question is, will you be eligible, right? Will your application be approved? Again, it depends on the nature of is tentativity a word? Like if they send you an email saying this course is probably not going to run, that negates reasonable assurance. That's not assurance, obviously, at that point. But if they tell you, the course will run assuming we get the enrollment, and there's no reason to question that you're probably going to get the enrollment, then that's different.
Okay.
I get a lot of questions.
Stuff here.
Oh, wait, hold on. Where somebody's got their.
I got it.
Oh, okay, great, thanks.
So
I'm sorry, John.
Each case is different. So, again, that might be something to check with me.
Terrific. Okay.
I have 2 questions from the chat.
Hold on one second. It's 2:00. I know we said we go to 2. We're gonna run over a little bit, but if you need to leave, fine. This is recorded, and if there's anything else you need to know, please get in contact with John, get in contact with the union. And I'm gonna drop my email in here at the end. Okay. Sorry.
I had two from the chat that were direct to me. If you've one person asked if you've received less classes in a semester and don't earn more than $504 or work 6 hours, does this constitute a return to work, quote unquote? A question they ask as you're certifying during a weekly claim.
Okay, so this is very important. So if people are unfortunately down to one class, right? And that's all the work you have from anywhere. You're teaching one course and one course only. And you're earning less than $504 per week, which means that in your bi-weekly paycheck, the gross is less than $1,008, right? 2 times 504. You have to go by what's in the paycheck, right? I think that there are still a lot of adjuncts who, if they're only teaching one course, are earning less than $504 per week gross. You can claim unemployment during the semester. 590.10 does not apply during the semester. You're just like anybody else. You're underemployed. You're working fewer than 10 hours, than 11 hours a week. You're entitled to full unemployment along with, teaching that one course.
I have one question. Hello?
Thank you.
Wait.
There's one
Hold
more.
on one sec.
One more question. Somebody says, and because this hasn't been asked, I'm a graduate student at the GC, and I work as an adjunct. Can I apply for employment during the summer? I've been offered a course to teach in the fall, but don't have a summer appointment. And if it's okay to apply, would that jeopardize my health insurance coverage over the summer?
Okay, well, I'm not sure I can answer the question about the health insurance, but okay, so there are a whole bunch of things wrapped up in this question. Okay,
Yeah,
so
graduate
first of all,
assistants get the stipend.
okay, so if the question is your adjunct work tied to your being a graduate assistant, right? In other words, if you're pursuing a degree at CUNY and the work that you're doing for CUNY is connected to your pursuance of a degree, there's special rules about that. The earnings can't be counted. But if it's independent of that, you just happen to be an adjunct in addition to being a student at CUNY, then that's okay. The fact that your course has been canceled for the summer, as we said before, does not help you, okay? I mean, it means you're unemployed. It means you're potentially eligible for benefits. But again, it goes back to 590.10. Are you on semester to semester? Or are you on year to year? What did you have this semester or this past year? What have you been told about what's coming up?
Thank you.
Great. Thanks. All right. So we have Scott and then we have Farnat. Scott?
Thanks. I just wanted to let John and everyone else know one crucial piece of information which may affect the way that we approach disputes for those people who are going to be on this new 2-year appointment. And that is the 2-year appointment is substantially different in terms of its underlying job protections than the 3-year appointment. And there is even in CUNY's guidance that it is giving to colleges, and I'll put the link for their guidance in the chat in just a second. CUNY itself in its guidance says that the 2-year appointment offers no guarantee of minimum credits. And I think that might be important as we're disputing these things. And I'll put the link in the chat so that everybody has access to, and again, this is CUNY's document.
Right.
Great.
Well, that certainly is very important. I'd like to have that. And I think that that's something that people would enclose in an application for benefits, That's very important. I mean, I'm sorry to hear it, but it also may mean that people are more eligible for unemployment.
Scott, can you do me a favor and highlight exactly the area where that language is? It makes it much easier for people to kind of pull out and just stick in their reasonable assurance arguments.
It's actually real easy. What I
John?
I just put in the chat was a chart that they made, that CUNY made, that said, you'll see it right at the end of the chart. Is guarantee of classes? No.
Right, as long as
John, that's
that
being
document.
disputed, just so that you know.
Yeah, no, it's a
There's
grievance.
a
but-
grievance about it. We can use it certainly for these purposes. It's great.
Absolutely. I think that for this year, as long as they're sticking to their language, then we can stick it to them. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, until we definitively win that
Yeah,
grievance,
exactly.
this is what we've got to work with.
Yeah, no,
This is what
yeah,
they're
thanks.
saying. You know, this is what
Yeah,
they're saying.
exactly.
You know.
Right. Okay, that's great. Thank you, Scott, very much. Farinaut. I'm
Yes,
sorry if I'm
I
mispronouncing your name.
I type. No, it's fine. It's perfectly fine. I typed my question in the chat.
I don't see it. Do you want to just say it now? 'Cause
Yeah,
you're
like
here.
I teach in different colleges, but I don't have any classes for this summer. So can I apply for unemployment?
No. Not having classes during the summer, we've said this already today. That's not the issue. The issue is how many classes did you teach at each of these colleges last year versus how many have you been told you're probably going to be teaching in the coming year? That's the question.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
okay.
spring, fall and spring to fall and spring, as opposed to anything you do during the summer, which, yes, as John and I both think it's really unfair, but that's how they look at your unemployment.
Yeah.
Okay,
Canceled
good.
summer classes, that's not
Yeah.
relevant.
Okay, but now my other question, and that's my last. So, what if you have like let's say like your like a personal like job, something you do on the side that has nothing to do with teaching?
Okay, I'm not understanding.
Yeah, I'm not.
Side
So,
job, a side job.
Side job.
like yeah, like if you have your own, let's say you have your own business type of thing, like a 1099.
Okay. Well, if you have a business, you're not eligible for unemployment. If you have an active, ongoing business, you're not eligible for unemployment.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay, if you do, freelance work or independent contract work, again, you're going to be reporting that when you apply. I do other work besides adjunct. I do this work and this work and the other work. Okay, and some of the earnings from those jobs may be countable towards a claim. But if you actually have a business, a registered active business, then that's different. Then that can be disqualifying. Now, there are occasional businesses that are little enough so that they're not disqualified.
Okay.
Like if it's really a side business, like we had a case of a woman who made soap in her apartment and sold it at street fairs twice a year. That's not a disqualifying business. We actually had a hearing, one year. But, but a lot of businesses, especially if it's registered as, registered as an S corp or something like that, that can be disqualifying. So they ask you on the application, are you an officer of a corporation? Do you have a business? They ask you.
Okay.
And so you have to tell them. Now, again, you could try and the business may or may not be disqualifying, but they're going to ask you for a whole bunch of information. Do you have business tax returns? Do you have an office? Do you have staff? Et cetera.
I see. No problem. Yeah, I've never had a chance to apply for unemployment though. That's why that question. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you're on a 1099, again, John spoke about that before. If it's just kind of one-off work here and there that you do, and you get a 1099 at the end, it's not the same thing as a business. It's
Okay.
kind of side jobs.
Somebody asked the question about if I have a 3-year contract, can or can I not reasonably apply for unemployment insurance in the summer? Thank you so much.
Okay. You can apply. The question is, will you be eligible? It
Yeah.
all depends on whether or not they've given you more work last year than you are guaranteed for the coming year, right? So the 3-year contract guarantees 2 courses or 6 credits per semester, right? If you taught 9 and 9 this year, and so far you've only got the assurance that you're going to get 6 and 6 next year, then you're eligible. But if you had 6 and 6 this year, then you're not eligible, right? Does that make sense?
It does to me. I hope it does to the person who I'm asking for.
Yeah.
So
And I just,
it depends on the particulars, right? That's why I keep doing this, because the particulars make it interesting, right? So, it does depend on the specifics of each person's situation. There's no cut and dry here.
yeah, thanks, John. I just want to reply to Sakina, because she had said, this reminds me of how Walmart management was showing employees how to apply for unemployment or probably Medicaid, and SNAP and stuff. And I agree with you from one point of view, which is this is part of CUNY, not the PSC is helping you. It is not. We are not CUNY, right? We do not agree with the system. We would like everyone to have full-time, stable, secure jobs. That's what we fight for. That's why we're here. But I want to say that every adjunct who applies for unemployment is directly accessing funds from CUNY. What you were saying, John, about the price of unemployment going up is such a good thing because it just makes them think more and more about having these contingent at-will employment jobs by the thousands. I mean, we're 11,000 adjuncts. And I just want to say that applying for unemployment is an act of resistance. Just remember that.
Right. Well, and I think in a way it is. I mean, I think the difference with the Walmart situation, from what I understand, is that Walmart actually actively counsels people who they underpay to go get, SNAP benefits
Medicaid,
and, Medicaid because they are so poor. They're the working poor. And so that's called externalizing your costs, right? Instead of providing health insurance or providing a living wage, they say, well, go get the rest from the state, CUNY is not doing it. CUNY is not saying to adjuncts, well, we underpay you, but you can get unemployment, go get it, right? No, they're trying to underpay you and keep you from getting unemployment.
Exactly, you're right.
So it's not the same as Walmart, but it is similar in the sense that you have sort of state benefits making up for the fact that you don't get paid properly. No. You don't get paid enough. You don't get paid a year-round salary. If you were a full-time faculty member, you would not qualify for unemployment during the summer because you have a year-round salary, and that would keep you from qualifying.
Yeah.
But
I have one more.
Part-time workers like theater people, they get unemployment, and we have tried many times to change the law, to change it on a state level. And when we did try to change it on a state level, the feds came in immediately and blocked that. So it's an issue of having it applied to higher ed people or educational institution people.
Right.
And this is partly due to the fact that public school teachers were paid on a 12-month contract and they were applying for unemployment. They were double dipping. But we're not double dipping. We just don't have a secure job. So it's a fight.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there are certain, I've heard of other categories of seasonal workers who are denied unemployment between seasons, like loggers in Maine and people who do professional sports, who used to be, and have an off season when they weren't paid, they weren't allowed to collect unemployment during the off season, that kind of thing. But adjuncts, I think, are the main group that are subject to this exclusion of being able to get benefits when they're between gigs, and it is totally unfair. But that's a different fight on a different level. Right now, what we're talking about is trying to get what we can get under the present rules. And, we can go pretty far, not far enough, but we can go pretty far under the present rules in getting a lot of people a lot of money. So that's what we want to do. So, I see that.
I have one more. I have one more question, John, and it hasn't been answered at all. I'm an adjunct CLT. I work 225 hours per semester for a while, but my department doesn't tell me what hours I will work in the fall till 2 weeks before the semester starts. Can I take unemployment for the summer?
Until that point, until that 2 weeks before the semester point, then you're probably eligible because, it's the same reasonable assurance question, See, that's the other thing is what do you know and when do you know it? Okay. If they haven't told you the amount of work when you first apply and they then do tell you, on July 1st or July 15th or August 15th, at that point, you stop claiming unemployment because now you've got the assurance. But very often schools wait until the very end, a week or two before, to tell people. So, I would think that a person would be eligible.
Great.
Okay, so
Pam,
that's
can
the
I
schedule.
ask a quick, Pam, can I ask a quick question? When are we getting letters of reappointment? I'm listed.
June
14th.
14th this year.
June
When?
14th.
June 14th.
June 14th, thank you.
Right, okay. All right. John, I thank you so much. This has just been so informative, and I know everyone here really appreciates all the work that you do for us. But, you know, all of us have called you. I've called you. You've helped me on my half-day hearings. You know, I mean, it's just been it's been so great to work with you over all these years, and we all really appreciate everything that you do.
Right.
So
Right.
thank you.
Well, let me just say, it's not just me. It's not only me. Thank you for the appreciation. But it's my coworker, Joel Leichter, who represents most of the claimants at hearings, and our little staff, you know. But we are very happy and really honored to help. You know, we've had this very good, longstanding working relationship with PSC. We think this is very important. We're very pro-union. We think that, you know, the strength of unions is extremely important. And so, you know, I second your encouragement to anybody who might not be an actual member of PSC and who's on this call to join and support the union, because the union really does try hard. It fights, and not every union does, but PSC really does go all out. So anyway,
Thank you.
thank you very much for being on this, taking the time.
Can you give us your phone number again, please?
Yes, one more time. It's 212-627-1931. Okay, that is our office voicemail. You'll never get a busy signal. You know, you can call that anytime, day and night. Leave us a message. We'll call you back. All of our services are free. We don't charge for our services. We accept contributions gratefully, but we don't charge for our services. And one last thing that I will mention is that we do an annual fundraising event. This year it's going to be on May 20th, and we happen to be honoring your president, James Davis, as one of our 3 honorees this year. So just want to alert everybody to that. If people are interested in links to that, we can probably provide one, so let us know. All right?
Great.
So anyway, thank you all very much, and we hope you all have a wonderful weekend.
This will be on the PSC unemployment under benefits. This will be the recording.
The latest,
yeah,
our latest recording.
On the website.
Yeah.
Sorry to garble that.
I think, yeah, thank you so much. Okay. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody.